Okay, I can see people are in the webinar now, so let's begin. Firstly, thank you for your time and joining us for this webinar, Equip your students with knowledge to build greater confidence in math. On the panelist, we are delighted to have our speaker, Nathalie van der Wel, who is a lecturer at Avans University of Applied Sciences, and Shahid Ahmed, who is an implementation manager at McGraw Hill. Thank you both for joining us today. Just to give you an overview of the session plan for today, Nathalie will share her experience in math innovation and talk about challenges surrounding math preparedness and building greater confidence for students through personalized learning, followed by Shahid, who will be showcasing exciting adaptive learning tool ALEKS, which is powered by artificial intelligence. You'll also have the opportunity for Q&A towards the end. Or if you have a question during the webinar, you can type it in the Q&A box. Lastly, these are your moderators for today. That's Geeta Chandolia, Afsana Akhtar, and myself, Sarah Shuja. We will help and support you with the Q&As and the chat box queries. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Afsana, who will go over the housekeeping slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarish. Just before we begin, can I just get everyone to raise their hands? Let's check if everyone can hear me. Perfect. Yep. Let's get hands. So before we begin and I pass over, so just a heads up, I think you guys are all connected to the audio, but if for any reason you aren't, just drop us a note in the chat box and we'll try to help solve it. It is recommended to call in using your phone if you do have poor connection. But of course, if you're fine using your computer, that's okay as well. Other high kind of bandwidth platforms can affect your connection, just bear that in mind. The session will be recorded and we'll be providing the recording to you guys afterwards as well. So if you do miss anything, we can provide that video to you guys to kind of catch up on at the end. And also there will be a Q&A and a timing for you guys to ask any questions, and our speaker will help to answer those. And the final thing, so in terms of engagement during the webinar, you probably notice you're muted. So we do have the chat box and the Q&A here that you can use to engage. So you can use the Q&A box to answer any questions, and then the chat box for general points that you might want to make, or if you want to engage with any of the panelists, you can kind of engage with them privately as well if you need to. And we do also have a bit of a polling function, so if you can see the speaker on the right-hand side, that is for you guys to kind of answer any questions that these speakers might kind of put out to you. Okay, I will now hand over.
Thank you, Afsana. Over to you, Nathalie.
Okay, thank you, Sarish. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nathalie van der Wel. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm showing here where you have this webinar from my point of view. So here is the Netherlands, and maybe you heard all of Amsterdam, that is here in the square, and then with the arrows there is Avans University, and the right one in 's-Hertogenbosch is hardly to pronounce. That's where I live, and I'm coming to you from there, and also there is one Avans University there. So today we have about 32,915 students. Well, that's quite precise. That's the number of today. Students in our university, and we have almost 3,000 employees. Within the Avans University, I particularly work at the School of Life Sciences and Environmental Technology, and we have bachelor programs such as chemistry, biology, chemical engineering, and such. And so there are 8 majors, and we have over 2,000 students. And here in the picture you see me on the lab with one of my colleagues, and here you see the students working on their assignments. But mostly I'm here in the classroom, and my students are working here on their laptops, and my classes are here. So About math education, so I teach mathematics and I also teach analytical chemistry. But in mathematics education, we have a long history of some challenges. So the mathematics are mainly abstract in the curriculum. It's about a sort of island, and we used to have limited use of software and some poor results. It is really a struggle for some students. Motivation is not always that high with our students in chemistry and biology especially. And I'm often asked by students, well, Nathalie, why do we have to learn this? It is not so obvious for chemistry and biology students why they have to learn mathematics. So, on the other hand, we see in the workplaces of engineers where our students will work in the future that in the last decades there have been major changes because of the ubiquity of ICT, digital technology, and other computer-driven equipment. So calculations are now mainly performed by computers and not by hand anymore, and the mathematics is often hidden by an interface. So engineers hardly work out problems with pen and paper anymore, so why do students still have to do that? And well, we asked ourselves in our university, shouldn't we change the mathematics curricula? How do we better prepare these students for the workplace? And what do they need to learn and know? And how do they need to learn that? And it was very obvious that it is not it's only different, but not less mathematics. So that's why I started a research and obtaining my PhD at Utrecht University at the Freudenthal Institute, which is the most famous institute in the Netherlands for mathematics education. And well, first of all, let's look at 21st century skills. That was the major topic of my PhD. Because why are they so central nowadays in our education? So if we look at the competencies, we see how students approach challenges. We see that critical thinking and problem solving is very important, creativity, communication, and of course collaboration. And so these are skills which are fairly known, but as a specific of those skills, in 2005, the new term Techno-mathematical Literacies are introduced, and they are specified as we consider TML as combinations of mathematical, IT, and workplace-specific competencies that demand an ability to deal with models and to take decisions based on the interpretation of abstract information. Well, long definition, but what can you think of when we're speaking of TML? Of course, well, technical communicative skills, the ability to interpret abstract data, and very important, having a sense of number and also symbols and formulas and a sense of error. Let me ask in between, if I'm going too fast or too slow, please let me know, and then I'll hear from the moderators. Okay, so these are some examples of TML. And what we did was first a field study of engineers in 14 interviews with engineers in all diverse technical domains. And we studied which techno-mathematical literacies they use in their workplace. So that was the first, and we discovered 7 categories of TML that engineers often use, and we published the first article about that in the International Journal of Science and Mathematics Education. And this is an open access paper you can read if you want to know more. So which are those TML categories? Well, the first one, data literacy, of course, to analyze and interpret technical data and all the graphical representations. Then we have the software skills. For instance, Excel is used, well, it's a basic program which is still used a lot. especially for a calculation tool. We have the technical communication skills, so really technical information. Maybe when you speak to certain customers, you have to pronounce things and explain them very easy, but also with colleagues in a technical sense. So all kind of different communication skills. Here the sense of error and the sense of number. Then a very important technical creativity, because, well, when you're collaborating on very difficult problems, you have to be creatively in a technical way. And then the last one, technical drawing skills. Of course, there's a lot of drawing in many technical domains. Well, what we do with this, we had this field study, and then we thought we also asked the engineers how they felt about their own education, and the main thing that came on was that they thought the mathematics should be applied to recognize where you use it for, and also for motivation. So we have now in our school 2 math courses. So the second one is the new course Applied Mathematics with the more than 400 students. And that's the course we created with the Techno-mathematical Literacies as main learning goals. And as a precursor, we have developed the help desk mathematics, and that's where we use ALEKS for, but more about that later. And about half of the population of students also follow this help desk because it is really a prerequisite for this next mathematics course, because the levels of our students are very various when they come into our school. So we use also in the new course Applied Mathematics, we use ALEKS as the basic, as the fundament of the course. And next to that, we have context-based cases. We develop those cases which are context with chemistry and biology and chemical engineering. And in fact, the course, the 2 learning tracks of the course are parallel in topics. So when we start with the course, we, for instance, it is a pre-calculus course, so we first do, for example, linear equations. Then they have it that week in their ALEKS course, linear equations, and then they have their application of the linear equations in the context-based cases, and that's in the classroom. So they do their ALEKS individual outside of the class, and in the classroom we work on those cases. And in that class we also provide a feedback hour for the students, and then we go really in-depth discussions, and we use then inquiry-based learning. So we focus on the process, how students can take on such cases, such problems, and how to address them. So the cases really ask for critical thinking and more in-depth work. And of course, in the cases, we focus on the techno-mathematical literacies. So to do that, we need that abstract base of mathematics, and we use ALEKS for that. So when they work, the students work on ALEKS in our university, they can really work at their own pace and level, and they can work anywhere and anytime. Of course, ALEKS always remembers where a student stopped, and they can easily continue anywhere, anytime. And it's a very advantage, because before we had students, when we still did, well, the old classes with only ALEKS-like questions, abstract mathematics, every time we had 1/3 of the classroom, it was too quickly, 1/3 of the classroom, it was okay, and 1/3 it was too slow. So you had students who were anxious, who were stressed, and you had students who were bored. And so what we now have, we have at the time when students needed the right mathematics, and they can do it in their own pace. And that prevents a lot of frustration with the students. They have success experiences very quickly, and we see that the math anxiety really drops. So how does it look, the ALEKS? For instance, here we have also in our first fortnight of the course, we do also quadratic formulas. Here we see the most simple example of this. So ALEKS gives the question and first an explanation, and then students can try it and can work on it. So the dashboard for me looks like this. I'm in ALEKS, I'm a professor, not in real life yet, but here I'm a professor, and here you see my dashboard. And in the recently viewed classes, you see all my classes, and it's in Dutch, so you see help desk. We use some English words. Wiskunde, that's mathematics, is from this year. And there you have the cursus toegepaste wiskunde. It means course applied math, and it was from last year. So here you see all your classes. You can go to that, but there will be more in detail later. And here you see students who have not recently logged in, so I can see how they are going. And and this is the dashboard. I go to everything. There are so many buttons and so many possibilities also for reports. And so I can monitor my students very closely and help wherever is necessary. So what are the results of the new course? So the main thing is that because of ALEKS, we have more time in the classroom for the deeper thinking and the real mathematical thinking, as it is more now available. And most students like, and some even love, ALEKS, and I have hardly any complaints about that. Well, you also always have one digital no-no, but we all are like that. But most of them very much like it, and it's very easy to follow. There are tests in between, and students learn it very quickly. And also in another language. My students are Dutch, so they had to learn some really mathematical English words, but we provided a word list and said, well, go get a dictionary, and they easily adapted to that. And moreover, English is a requirement in our education. So there are hardly any questions regarding the content. I have all my time. They can ask questions in the class. Now it's online. We do this online now, and it goes very well. And of course, ALEKS really suits all the online in this pandemic also. So I have hardly any questions because the examples and the explanation ALEKS provides is very thorough, and so I can outsource that part of my math easily. I see also that students work hard. I set up objectives every 2 weeks. They have to finish a certain amount of work, so we avoid binge learning, because that's what we all know as a teacher, that students wait until the deadline and then go for it. And we prevent that in a large way, because setting these in between objectives and deadlines. And we have this progress testing all the way through the course. So in the end, we really see this increased student motivation and engagement, and we also saw increased pass rates in our tests this year, but of course we have now different learning goals in our class because of the focus on the techno-mathematical literacies. So I can't compare those very equally, but what is certain that the amount of math we now do is just twice for the price of one, you can say, because half of the work in the ALEKS is done at home without requiring any teachers. So if you want to know more about the new course, I also published my second paper of my PhD about this new course, about the design, and you can also see in depth how these cases look like and what we ask from them. They are first-year students. It's very a first course, so pre-calculus, like I said, and not too difficult. And and also what the feedback hours were like and how the teacher, how the lecturers use the inquiry-based learning and the feedback hours to do those mathematical thinking and deeper thinking. And also some examples of ALEKS are also in this article. It's also open access, and I think the slides are being shared later, so you can read that if you would like that. So the last study I'm currently in, because I'm almost at finishing my PhD now, and we're going to measure the effectiveness of the course by means of a pre-test and a post-test. So that's the last one. And yeah, that's about it about the course. I think I'm perfectly in time. And I would like to thank you for listening, and I will hear any questions if there are any. Sarish, over to you.
Thank you, Nathalie. We've got a couple of questions coming in, yes. And I was wondering, do you want to answer them now, or do we go towards the end and we can cover them in the Q&A? It's up to you.
Okay, no, it doesn't matter for me. So if you have, if Shahed wants to go first, that's all right with me.
Okay, I guess we have 3 questions coming in. Thank you so much for your questions. We'll wait for more questions to come in yet, and then we can answer them in the Q&A. Thank you, Nathalie. It was very exciting to see how you've transformed your class using ALEKS. I think it's very interesting how you've customized the material based on the strengths of the student and everything else around it. Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
We'll now hear from Shahed, who will showcase the live ALEKS platform for us. Thank you, Shahed.
Thanks, Arish. Hi, everyone. My name is Shahed. I'm the implementation manager over at McGraw Hill, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. Just let me know, one of the panelists, if you can hear me okay. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Perfect. All right, so what I'll be doing now is sharing my screen and kind of walking you all through a brief demonstration of ALEKS. So just give me one moment while I do that. All right, so I think we're more about ready to go. All right, so I'm going to pick up. So a student that attempts or starts off his or her ALEKS course for the first time is first faced with an introductory message that explains to the student exactly what ALEKS is. So it's a personalized platform that helps the student learn at their own pace. And how the technology essentially works. So it figures out the topics that you already know and then guides the student to course mastery, or to the right path to course mastery through a continuous cycle of assessment and learning. So now that the student has an idea about what they're about to partake in, it gives them a little bit of an introduction to the interface itself. So it shows them where all the important buttons on the screen are. And it then takes the student through the tools tutorial. Now, one of the factors that kind of, I guess, challenge us when we try to move into online learning and online platforms is the fact that using the platforms itself can sometimes be challenging for students, right? And the way ALEKS tries to combat this is to make sure that every single student has to complete this tutorial before they get started with their ALEKS course. So it's a fairly simple tutorial. Students just have to enter their answers as per the instructions on ALEKS, figure out exactly what the buttons are so they can delete their answers, they can undo any changes that they've made, and then move on to the next part of the tutorial. Now, as I'm going through the tools tutorial, you will notice that almost all the questions on ALEKS are open-ended. So there are no multiple choice questions. There are very few, choose your own answer questions. It's all open-ended, and students have to actually enter the answers in. So for example, here, I can use the different tools on my screen to enter fractions, to enter decimals, to enter, parentheses, etc. Now, because I'm on a demo account, I can actually skip through this without taking you through each and every part of the tutorial. And then we move into the graphing functions on ALEKS as well. So here, students have to know exactly how they use the platform to graph. So they place the first point, the second point, and they can then plot a graph on the platform itself. And then moving on, finally, we have a calculator that's integrated within ALEKS as well. if your course does allow for the use of a calculator, students will be taught on exactly how to use this, use that tool as well. Now, this brings us to one of the benchmarks and the key points within ALEKS, which is what we call the initial knowledge check. Now, when you start off your ALEKS course for the first time with your cohort of students, it is very important for ALEKS to determine what is the pre-existing knowledge state of each particular student. So what the initial knowledge check is a diagnostic that helps you as an instructor place each of your students prior to starting the course. So the initial knowledge check consists of all the topics that you've selected to be a part of your syllabus or your course outline, and it will provide a 30 to 40-minute diagnostic for all the students in your class. So it gives the student a couple of tips before they start. It tells them not to be distracted, not to get help from others, and just to make sure they have a pen and pencil and paper available to do any of their working that they need to. And just to make sure that they take their time, try their best, because it is a diagnostic. It's important for the students to understand that this is not a quiz or a test, and it just wants, the system just wants to gather exactly what their knowledge state is at that point in time. Gives them an example of the kind of questions they're about to face, and then they can go ahead and start their knowledge check. The questions that you see here are fairly basic, but then again, this is an beginner algebra course over at this university. So students can go ahead and answer this to the best of their abilities. If they're absolutely stuck, they can press I don't know to move on to the next question. And then finally, once again, I'm going to go ahead and skip it because I can on a demo account, but students do not have the ability to skip through this. Let's say I have a moderate knowledge of this course. Once I finish my diagnostic, as a student, I am then given my knowledge state represented in the form of a pie chart. This is, again, another very important part of the ALEKS process where the students will measure their progress through their mathematics course in the form of a pie. The pie will show them exactly what they know and what what's left for them to learn through this course. This is also split up into segments of the pie. So the student is able to click on any slice of the pie and get an idea of how many topics they've mastered and how many are remaining. At any point in time, they can also browse through their timeline, and ALEKS keeps a track of exactly where they've started when they finished their diagnostic and where they need to be by a certain date. Now, the date you see here is the end date that has been set for this particular course, but every course on ALEKS is mapped to a start date and an end date, allowing the student to gauge their progress through the weeks and months of the course. And now we start our continuous cycle of learning and assessment, our ALEKS pie. It is the job of the student at this point in time to progress through the pie to make sure they reach the flag at the end of the course. How they do this is starting their progress through their own customized and personalized learning path. Clicking on Start My Path then takes the student through the various topics that are within the course, guiding the student to exactly the topics that they're ready to learn at that moment in time. A student would never face a topic that they have absolutely no idea how to answer. And this is determined through a complex algorithm that we can possibly get into if you have further questions in the Q&A session. But for now, the first thing that the student sees is their learning page. So the learning page will show the students exactly what the question is, a detailed explanation of how to answer the question. Any terminologies or mathematical terms have definitions that can be clicked on and explained further if a student has any confusion about what a right angle or what an acute angle is. And then finally, you have the final answer, the final correct answer. At any point in time, the student can navigate to a wealth of resources on the right-hand side. Now, some ALEKS courses, it's up to you as an instructor if you do want an ebook integrated within. But if you do, then you can have access directly to an ebook on the right-hand side of your page. You can also print out this learning page if you do want to study offline. Now that you've learned and experienced this question, it's then up to the student to go ahead and answer it without any help. So this is the continuous cycle of learning that happens within ALEKS. Once a student completes a certain percentage of the pie, once the student spends enough time on ALEKS, so it's a mix of both of those things, the student is then faced with a knowledge check. The knowledge checks are essentially placeholders within ALEKS that tell the student to stop their learning and then ask them questions based on everything that they've covered so far. Now, this usually happens every 4 hours or every 20 or 30 topics within ALEKS. So there is a continuous cycle that allows the student to go back, refresh their knowledge, make sure they haven't forgotten any of the topics that they've already covered. Once a student can demonstrate that they've answered these questions correctly in a knowledge check, that is when those topics are counted as mastered within the course. So here, the student can get an idea of all the questions that are yet to come within the course, and that they can navigate to any one that they wish to answer first. And then, this in a nutshell is a very brief view of how the student experiences the ALEKS platform. What I'm going to do now is jump back into the instructor view. You can go in and select questions from the ebook or from the ALEKS pool of questions itself. Get an idea of what the question looks like, and if you're happy with this question, you simply drag and drop and create your own quiz. Now, keep in mind as I'm doing this that all questions within ALEKS are open-ended and all questions within ALEKS are algorithmic. So you could essentially give, 3 versions of the same question, but every one of your students would be getting a different value, making sure there's no risk of them sharing their answers with each other, copying from each other, or anything of that sort. It's up to you again to decide what resources the students have access to. Do you want them to have access to the explanations? Maybe if it's a graded quiz, you might remove some of these functionalities. And then you decide all the other policies that go into creating a quiz or an examination. And you can then deliver this assignment to your students. So I'm going to cancel this for now. I'm not going to go ahead and do this. Keeping in
That was really fascinating and very interesting to see everything. Wow.
Thanks, Arish.
A lot of questions. Thank you so much for your questions, everyone. And I think a lot of questions are for you, Nathalie. So I'm going to start asking them to you. So we have a question from Ahmed Amir. Thank you, Ahmed. How do you use ALEKS reports to rebuild your future courses?
That's for me, Sarish, right?
Yes.
So I use the reports to see whether students have finished the ALEKS prerequisite, in fact, for the course. So my aim is that they master 90% of all topics which I selected. And when the report gives me that information, that after the deadline, if they have done so. And they also have then, for the cases, they have an exam. And the grade for that exam is their end grade. So when they have, so it's like a prerequisite. When they have finished that, it's finished, and then I use the grade for the exam. So as to changing the topics, because I think the asking the question is meaning that I haven't changed it in 4 years, the topics, because they're all essential for us. I only selected topics we needed. It was 163. They have to do that in 7 weeks. And that's about 28 hours of student investment. But of course, that differs per student. And I didn't see one topic, if there was any topic which was too difficult or too easy. Well, if it's too easy, the student already masters it in the initial knowledge check, so that's not a problem. But I haven't had any reason to change that.
Oh, so you did not rebuild it. Wow, that's fascinating.
No, the first time I looked all the topics up and I watched an example of every topic, so to see, is this really what I mean? And then we selected them, and afterwards I just copy class every year.
Okay, so it was easy that way. Okay, yeah. Good. Thank you. There's another one for you, Nathalie. How easy was the implementation of ALEKS on your course? What steps did you have to take, and what support did you receive?
Well, well, it was 8 years ago I started with ALEKS, so already a long time ago. And the first time, yeah, it was a lot of work to just get to notice all the buttons, because I didn't have someone to guide me. I had to figure it out myself. But nowadays, there's a lot of support for that, also from McGraw Hill. And I would very much advise to use all that support and not figuring out all the buttons yourself, because it's such a complex system with so many opportunities that there are a lot of buttons to learn. I was in awe of Shahed, who just went over it and very highlighted all the important ones. And even I don't use all those opportunities, because it's so massive how you can big brother everything. So I just use what I need, and it was first a little bit time to know, and especially to look up the right course and then select all the right topics for me. That was the most work. But as I just explained, I copied it throughout the years. And then it was, it's hardly any work at all anymore. And so just get all the support you need, so you don't have to search very much. Just let McGraw Hill what you need, and then they can provide the instruction.
Thank you, Nathalie. I'm just going to pause and let everyone know that if you have any questions, you can type them on the right side on the chat box, and we can address them right now. We've got another question from Ahmed. Thank you, Ahmed, for your question. How do you identify students at risk, and what remedies do you have for them?
Sorry, was it for Ahmed or for me, Sarish?
It was a question from Ahmed, so thank you, Ahmed, for your question.
Oh,
but
from Ahmed. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It was for me, Sarish.
It is for you. All of them are for you, Nathalie.
Yeah. Well, actually, because I see my students in class every week because of the cases, I always ask how is it going, and come to me if you have any problems or questions. And often I ask, well, how far are you? Have you finished objective 1? I do it in an informal way, but I can watch online in ALEKS and can see everything they do, and every answer even. So what Shahed just showed is that you can see per student or per topic which are hard or something, and you can monitor that very closely. But I hardly do that, because I like the really more personal bond with my students, and I talk to them, and so for me it's not a need to watch every step they make in ALEKS. It is possible, but I don't need it. And then I only check at the end whether they have mastered enough topics, a minimum of 90%. And then there's a check in my box that they have completed it. So again, I could look it up, but I hardly do that.
Thank you. That makes sense. Another question for you is, how have students responded to ALEKS? Do they say they're enjoying it?
Yeah, so at first there's a lot of math anxiety in mathematics in general. So it's very important, I think, as a lecturer to try to ease them and give them some TLC. And then first they have the English problem, of course, in the Netherlands. And then I say, well, there are some terms. If you look them up, you get used to it, because mathematics is not about this much of text or something. So they get used to it quickly, and then I never hear about the English again. And then as to the content, there's very good explanation. Sometimes a student has, well, I don't understand this completely, then I try to explain it in another way. But that is hardly the case. Most students never ask any question about the content to me, only about some buttons, because they don't like to read, so I provide a manual, but they don't read it. So it's very intuitive to go through the path. But for instance, I have extra knowledge checks when they are nearly finished, and then I always have to explain, not one time, but of course 10 times. Then when you look in the menu under assignments, you can find the extra knowledge check. So for students, they hardly use, they use not many buttons, just they follow the path, and that is fine that they hardly use the buttons. And then when they have questions, they ask it me, but it's mostly about the buttons and not so much from the content. So did I answer now the question, Sarish, or did I
Yes, pretty much. I think it's a follow-up question based on what you've just said, and I see it's coming. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. And I think it's based on what you've just told us. It's how do you encourage your students to use ALEKS?
Well, that is the simple. In my case, it is a prerequisite to pass the course. They have to master 90% of the topics. I have these objectives, so I stimulate that they work on it. I speak to them every week, now online, and normally was it in the classroom before. And then I say to them, how far are you? And I engage with them. And then I say, did you have a boring party of your aunt this week? Yes, you have. Did you work on ALEKS in the corners? You know, I make fun of it, that they can work anywhere, anytime, and that they can take an hour or so and also stimulate they don't work too long on it because it's hard work. And they spread it out, they plan it in their calendar when they work on it, and that's how I try to keep them motivated. But in the end, I don't really have to motivate because A, it is just a prerequisite, so they do it. And B, yeah, most of them like it because it is so less frustrating for them that they can really go their own level. And even when they're not doing something very good, the system throws them back a little bit or provides an extra topic. I can provide that before I start the class. And then they don't have to take this step, but they just have to take this step. And just that little step on little step is very good to reduce the math anxiety. And I see very much progress in that.
Thank you. Thank you. We've got another one for you. And this is a very interesting question. So thank you so much for your question. How does ALEKS cater for mixed ability students?
Mixed ability students. Yes, well, I have students in my classroom who are at this level of mathematics and this level. More I can't show in the corner of my camera, but I would have expanded it otherwise. And that's why I introduced the help desk, what I told. And that starts at just the basic level. Actually, some of the topics there are just basic school, what is it called in English? The elementary school level. Some things are with fractions, it's almost elementary level. So students can work up, and some of them spend 60 hours on that. I give extra credit to that, some only 10. But it is very nice to level up my students a little bit before we start their applied mathematics. But even in the applied mathematics, we have still level differences in speed, of course, that's a large one, and the entrance level. And well, because they can do it in their own pace, and with the time they get, nobody is rushing them, nobody is telling them to hurry, so they can just do it in their private home, in the private moment, and with their favorite music. Once I got this little video of a student with a question about ALEKS, and I heard the banging music on the background, and I was laughing so hard because I was thinking, how can you learn mathematics with that? But so it's so in their own way, and they can feel comfortable, and that is very good for the math anxiety. And yeah, just their own pace. It's very different from in the classroom. So I really like this abstract mathematics, this real basic, to go outside class, and we can yeah, delegate this in fact to a system, so that in the classroom I can do all the more processed thing with them, and of course the real mathematical deeper thinking.
Thanks. Thank you everyone for your questions. We're getting a lot. It's great to have a lot of engagement at this webinar, and luckily we've got some time in so we can adhere to all these questions. I think this one's for you, Shahid, maybe. It says, and thank you for your question. It is possible to restrict college access via IP addresses or something like that? Is it possible to restrict college access via IP addresses or something like that?
Yes. So I'm happy I finally got a question. Give Nathalie a break. I've been waiting here. I'm like, guys, I need some questions too. No, but the short answer is yes, and that's usually something that the proctoring tools help with. You can restrict, and you can at least monitor, you know, answers coming in from a certain IP. But there are kind of guidelines around that, and the reason why we don't recommend something like that is unless you're having an exam or a quiz on ALEKS, you probably don't want to restrict an IP, especially in the current climate, because students can be using, can be logging on to ALEKS from a variety of different Wi-Fi addresses. They could be at their friend's house, they could be at their grandma's house, and it might pose more of a restriction on students than be an actual academic advantage for them. So it's something that we don't usually recommend. What we do recommend is monitoring your ALEKS reports to see that if there is a student that has been, let's say, learning 5 topics an hour, and they go home on a Saturday and then they jump to 20 topics on the Saturday, you can then go in, check their IP address during that session, and check to see if it was actually the same IP address that they usually use, or if it was someone else probably logging in with their credentials. So you can use it to kind of look at red flags that pop up, but I would not recommend restricting it completely.
Okay, thanks. There's another one, Shahid. Can you answer this, please? Can the questions be customized?
So this is a great question. I think the short answer is no. The questions on ALEKS are drawn from, they're part of the software, they're part of the algorithm itself. We can't go in and change any questions on ALEKS. There are reasons for that. I think every question that is built on ALEKS feeds into the algorithm, and it's mapped against certain criteria on the back end, things that I personally don't have much knowledge about on how the platform is built. But I guess that's the main reason why you can't really add your own questions into the pool. But there are other platforms from McGraw Hill where you can do that. Connect and SmartBook allow you to do that. So perhaps if you do need that, if that is a very strict requirement for you as an instructor, there are other platforms that can help you with that.
Okay, brilliant. And one more is, are knowledge checks automated, or can they be assigned to students by the instructor? Very good question.
That's a fantastic question, and the answer is both. They are automated, and so a knowledge check will show up. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but every 4 hours that a student spends on ALEKS, or every 20 topics that they complete. And these are the guidelines that prompt a knowledge check. You can also assign or schedule knowledge checks for your students at a time that you think is crucial for them. So you can do both. So both are features within ALEKS.
Thanks, Shahid. We're
No worries.
Time now. And there's just one last question for you, Nathalie. If I were to use ALEKS on my course, is it possible to gain advice from you on how we could use it?
Yes, of course. Yeah, you can. We can do that through McGraw Hill Education. Yes. Yeah, very much happy to.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I guess we're just about time now. But thank you so much for keeping this so engaging, and thank you for you both for your valuable contribution. And thanks everyone for attending the session today. We will be sharing the recording of the webinar via email. If you're interested to join our webinar, we have one planned for tomorrow. It's Moving Online with Success in Finance and Accounting. My colleague Afsana will drop the registration link in the chat box. You can also stay connected with us through our social channels, and please feel free to email us if you have any questions. And thank you for making this an interactive and engaging session. See you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Nathalie, as well. It was great.
Yes, thank you also, all, and Shahid. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.